Aboard the 46-gun privateering frigate, Charles II, the air smelt of damp wood, cheap rum, and festering anger. For months, the ship had sat paralyzed in the harbor. The crew of hardened British sailors, hired to hunt French smugglers, had not been paid a single copper coin. They were starving, their clothes turned into rags, forced to watch Captain Gibson drink his days away. Among these starving men was the first mate, a battle-hardened Royal Navy veteran, his name Henry Avery. Avery had seen the brutal realities of naval warfare and the transatlantic slave trade. He knew that to the men sitting in London financing this voyage, the crew were just disposable numbers on a ledger. If they starved to death, they would simply be replaced. The men grumbled, they complained, they begged for their wages, but Avery didn't. And as the sun set on May the 7th, he decided he was done waiting for permission to leave. Mutiny is usually a chaotic, bloody affair, but Avery was a man of cold, calculated discipline. In the dead of night, while Captain Gibson lay unconscious in his bed, Avery quietly rallied the men who were hungry enough to risk the hangman's noose. Without firing a single shot, they secured the armory, took the deck, and severed the anchor lines. When the sun rose, the Charles II was already out to sea. Captain Gibson, finally awake, was brought to the deck. Avery didn't gloat. He looked his former commander in the eye and delivered the words that sealed his fate.
I am captain of this ship now.
He put Gibson on a rowboat, pointed him towards the shore, and turned his ship towards the horizon. His newly acquired vessel, renamed Fancy, underwent massive modifications. The hull was perfectly cleaned and recoated with alum sulfur. All the massive superstructures at the bow and stern, typical of heavy merchant and naval vessels, were physically torn down and leveled, making the Fancy the fastest sailing ship in the world, capable of catching any prey and outrunning any naval pursuit. In his early raids from Cape Verde down to the Guinea coast, he absorbed willing sailors into his crew. But what made him legendary still had to come. When Avery arrived at the strait, he wasn't alone. 5 other pirate ships were already prowling the waters, commanded by legendary, ruthless men. The most famous among them was Thomas Tew, captain of the Amity, a man whose reputation struck terror across the ocean. These were chaotic, ego-driven killers, each looking out for his own fortune. But Avery did something unprecedented. The newest captain on the water stepped into the center of the wolves and united them. He forged an alliance, establishing himself as the undisputed tip of the spear. 6 ships, over 400 men, a private armada united under one cold, calculated vision. The target, the invaluable treasures of the great Mughal fleet. The great fleet consisted of 25 ships, but they had passed the strait in the night. The pirates separately chased them into the open ocean. Avery ignored the scattered stragglers, carving a path directly towards the 2 main ships. He first caught the Fateh Mohammed, overwhelming her with ease. She was already damaged by her engagement with Thomas Tew, who had lost his life in the fight. Days later, it was time for the real prize. Called the Gunsway by the English, it was a massive ship, a nightmare of naval engineering, a 1,500-ton behemoth towering over the water. The Fancy was dwarfed, but Avery didn't waver. He fired a broadside that critically shattered the main mast, snapping it in half, crippling the giant's maneuverability. Moments later, a massive iron cannon on the Mughal deck overheated and exploded, slaughtering their own gunners and plunging the behemoth into chaos. The price? Well over $100 million in today's money. In a single afternoon, Avery had pulled off the most lucrative heist in human history. The fallout was apocalyptic. The East India Company panicked. The British Crown declared Avery an enemy of all mankind. They placed a massive bounty on his head, triggering the first truly global manhunt in history. The entire world was looking for one man. Avery casually sailed to the Bahamas, used an alias. He bought off the corrupt governor with a handful of gold and his own ship, and he divided the largest fortune ever stolen among his crew. Then, with a small sloop, he sailed to Ireland and stepped off the boat. He vanished. No final shutout, no dramatic capture, no hangman's noose. Despite the combined might of global empires hunting him, Avery evaporated, leaving behind nothing but a legend. History remembers Avery as a pirate, but beneath the violence and the plunder lies a masterclass in execution and absolute control. Avery's true genius wasn't just the tactical brilliance, but his total lack of ego. He didn't want the world to know his name. He wanted to be a ghost, looking at a system designed to grind him into dust and refusing to participate.